This is Brian DeBauer, and just like his father and grandfather before him, he runs what has become one of the largest car sales companies in the US. And I just bought $1,000.46 of their stock at $294.69 a share. This is obviously a successful company, but let me explain why I think their stock is a great investment as well. First though, let's go over some updates to our Starting with the A's challenge. I've been going through every company I can find in alphabetical order and buying $1,000 of a company's stock for each letter so that we end up with a $26,000 portfolio at the end of the year, with the goal being to beat the market. Today, we're on the letter L and up to a $12,000 portfolio. The results recently have been lagging the S&P 500 by a few percent, but buying great businesses and holding them for a long time takes a while to play out, so I'm not worried. I like the group we've got. Lithia owns a lot of car dealerships, and I feel like everyone has a story about why they hate going to car dealerships, which is totally fair. But it makes it difficult to determine how well the average customer is being treated, because after all, I don't think it's the dealerships people hate. It's being sold to, feeling like you're being taken advantage of and pushed into a car you don't really want or can't afford. But if we manage to look past those loud, bad experiences, what we see is a great business. And if nothing changes, I think Lithia is priced pretty fairly as just a large network of dealerships. But if you're in the business of selling cars, then the reality is that everything is changing. The move to electric vehicles has caused one of the most rapid changes in car manufacturing in history. And once an EV is fully built and ready to be sold, you might not even have to go to a dealership to buy one. But the real key factor, in my mind, are the state franchise laws. These laws have been around for a while, and some are being updated to account for EVs. They basically prevent the maker of a car from starting their own dealership to sell that car, with the intent being that it would protect the owners of local dealerships from being bullied by the giant companies that supply their inventory. Even if they don't want to admit it, a car dealership's role in society is essentially that of a pure middleman. They take unwanted new or used cars and try to connect that car to someone somewhere that does want it. And part of what makes this such a great business is that there is, ironically, not a lot of money tied up in physical assets. Most of the cars you see on the lot were bought with loans called floor financing, which the dealership pays back once the car is sold. And even the lot the car sits on can be leased to the dealership, although Lithia does own most of the property they sell from, which I actually prefer. The dealership model has come under a lot of pressure recently for many different reasons, the biggest of which is probably just that people don't like it, but also because of technology. A manufacturer like Tesla has started to be able to get around state franchise laws by providing in-person showrooms that are not actually dealerships and then letting you order a car online once you're off Tesla's property. They're even going as far as using tribal land. It's not just the manufacturers. Companies like Carvana and Vroom are skipping the in-person part and letting you buy a car from your phone. But what if that's not the best way to do it? What if the best way to sell cars still involves a physical location? After all, electric cars will still need to be fixed, and cleaning up cars for resale is something that dealerships naturally do anyways. It's not clear that manufacturers even want to enter such a low-margin business that requires such a large network of stores, since it could really distract them from their main business of making a great car that people want to buy more than the great car their competitors just made. So much changing at the same time has led to a Lollapalooza effect. Opportunities appear as people make bad decisions due to short-term solvable problems, like a chip shortage or a union strike. A Lollapalooza is when multiple of those events happen at the same time and in the same direction, and the combination of those mistakes has a much greater effect than if you were to simply add them together. So in addition to supply shortages and strikes, there's also the increasing interest rates, ballooning of consumer debt, manufacturers switching to electric vehicles, the end of remote work, and the online purchasing of cars. But if you're a local car dealership, these events are all a huge problem, and that leads to something I like to think of as a value gap, where owning a local car dealership is more valuable to Lithia than it is to the original owner, so they're more willing to sell their business at a lower price. After all, before the internet, there was not much of a benefit to owning multiple dealerships other than having more of the same business. But now that we have the internet, big data, and remote ordering, a company like Lithia can build a brand under a single name that more profitably serves their customers because they have data on each transaction and the ability to move cars from one dealership to another. If we look at how Lithia has been spending their money, this starts to make a lot more sense. They've been using their profits to buy a lot of strategically placed local dealerships. Sometimes they even sell new shares of their stock when the price gets too high so that they have more money to buy more dealerships. And while normally selling selling off part of your business to acquire someone else's doesn't really work out very well, these dealerships are not that different from one another, so they're all in line with the main strategy. Of course, the unknowns causing the Lollapalooza are very real, and we don't know how things will end up for a while. But looking at the way Lithia is positioning itself and comparing that to its competitors, things could work out heavily in their favor. They have 3 generations of experience to work off of, and it seems to have led them to a solid, realistic approach. One of the things that could end up badly for Lithia is the fact that EVs will likely need less repairs given that the cars are made with a lot less parts. For example, you'd never need an oil change because there's no oil. While this would be great for the customer, Lithia will have to adjust, since a decent chunk of their money comes from repairs. But at the same time, we could be entering a world where it's impossible for the average person to repair their own car, and they have to bring it in for the smallest of things. If that wasn't enough, we're getting more and more reasons to have less cars on the road. Who knows what will happen when we get a true self-driving car, but even the rise of delivery services or ride-sharing like Instacart or Uber have caused a lot of people to question whether it makes sense for them to even have a car. Lithia's take on remote order car companies like Vroom or Carvana is called Driveway, and is run almost like a separate company within Lithia, except that it has the opportunity to tap into Lithia's dealership network. The market is certainly aware of Driveway, but it doesn't seem to show up much in the price, which gives us some optionality. We can almost think of it as buying Lithia and getting equity in Driveway for free. If Driveway does well, I think the investment in Lithia will do even better. If I had to guess what the world of car sales would look like in 10 years or so, I would say that dealerships will actually survive. The pushy salespeople might not, but maybe that's just wishful thinking. Something that is certainly not wishful thinking is Lithia's track record. They've been around since 1946 and have survived all the economic troubles and technology changes time has thrown at it. Since the start of 2012, they've had returns on equity above 15% and have done so without the use of too much debt. The letter M is the official halfway point in the challenge, so subscribe and see where we end up.